issue first. We're going to deal with the extradition issue. I want to leave that for last. When more people come, you share. I'm going to deal with this one we want to deal with now is this issue about corruption. Corruption, right? But before I deal with the corruption issue, let me play this tape about corruption. We haven't done so, or have not done so in a long time. I want to play it, and then we're going to talk about corruption because, you know, the word now is in vogue, except for Parliament where the word is banned. But I noted the Minister of Home Affairs, the new Minister of Home Affairs, talking about corruption. We learned yesterday there was some round table at the Pegasus there where Minister Teixeira talking about corruption. Well, let me tell you all this thing first about corruption. Let me play this tape, and then when you don't listen to that, then we're going to go into it. Here we go.
Corruption is a vile disease that sucks and drains the health out of something good. Corruption in society is an evil moral infection that keeps community in a state of perpetual sickness. Corruption is a moral virus. It's so potent it leaves its host sick, lethargic, and unable to realize and accomplish all that a well person can. Where corruption thrives, poverty and not prosperity thrives. Wealth is grabbed into the greedy, grubby hands of those who get fat on the toil and labor of good people. Corruption benefits, only temporarily, those who participate in it. Everyone else is a victim of the theft, the deceit, the dishonesty, and the lies that corruption feeds on. You need to know that a corrupt person is stealing from you. Corruption is filthy work and despicable acts of treachery done under the table and behind closed doors. Corruption is a disgusting shame. Corruption keeps a nation back from true development and from progress. Wise investors steer clear of a corrupt environment. They would rather put their resources into a place where the playing field of opportunity is equal for all and not bent towards feeding the financial lust of corrupt, lying, cheating, thieving politicians and government officials. How many wonderful development projects have been lost because the investors didn't want to do business in a swamp of evil? When those great projects go to another nation or to some other place, we all lose. Believe me when I tell you that corruption steals from you, it steals from all of us. Corruption plunders the nation's wealth. Corruption people compromise on truth, equity, and fairness, choosing instead to feed off the short-term benefits of crookedness, exploitation, and financial perversion. Corruption is not just a personal matter. It's a culture. It's a way of life, not just for individual people, but for companies, communities, governments, and nations. Corrupt nations, hiding behind large companies, will seek to invest in other weak nations in order to take over the assets of the nation that they've invested into. They will provide financial loans to a nation for the much needed infrastructure, and they will do it with assets that they provide. They will sign contracts by lining the pockets of rotten government officials who participate in this kind of corruption and are then held hostage by their own deceit and greed. Corruption is nothing less than a form of theft and national robbery. A corrupt person steals from everyone in society. We all lose when corruption is rampant. Those who participate in corruption have chosen evil over good, lies over truth, and personal gain over well-being of all. To be corrupt means to be rotten. When meat is corrupt, it's rotten, and it stinks. Rotten meat can't be eaten. When a person is corrupt, he's rotten and unfit for a place in the community. A corrupt person should be jailed in order to protect society from the vile deeds of the corrupt person. Government should be protecting us from the foul results of corruption instead of being the proponents and participants in corruption. When corruption is systemic, when it's a culture and a way of life, when corruption thrives, it destroys the health of the community and nation. Now let me tell you something. Defeating corruption is a very difficult thing. The love of money is the root of all evil, the Bible says. People who love money will do almost anything to get it. Those who choose to stand up against corruption, you need to know that we're going to be involved in a war. We will be threatened, vilified, intimidated, marginalized, and ridiculed. These kind of people who stand up against corruption will often feel alone, as if they are the problem instead of the solution. Corruption can only be defeated when enough people have had enough and decide to do something about it.
It can only be defeated when people feel they've had enough and decide to do something about it. So all of a sudden, the government talking about corruption. But I believe they're only doing this to tick a box. So when they, some agency come or they got to make some report, oh, we had a wrong table. Oh, we had the minister, we had that. That is what I believe, because they're not genuine in their attempt to tackle corruption, widespread, rampant corruption in Guyana, because many of their colleagues are involved and they don't want to rock the boat, right? But let me give you a definition, What is the legal definition for corruption? They say in law, corruption is the dishonest and fraudulent use of entrusted power or authority for a private gain. It can include specific criminal acts like bribery, embezzlement, and abuse of functions, which involve exchanging something of value to influence official decisions, stealing public funds, or using one's position for personal benefit. This abuse of power can occur in both public and private sector and undermines institutions and the rule of law. Now, important here, when they talk about corruption, most of them only looking at them policemen, and here we ain't condoning the act of corruption, who collecting a Granger or who collecting a something. They have this narrow definition for corruption. But when you look at corruption in the broader sense, you're going to see all sorts of things. Abuse of power for private gain, right? The core concept is using a position of authority, whether in government, business, or another institution, to get a personal or illicit benefit. Benefit not going to be cash necessarily, right? Not going to be cash necessarily. Then they say here too, specific offenses. Law defines specific corrupt acts, including bribery. The offering, giving, receiving, listen to this, offer, you give, you receive, or soliciting of something of value to influence an official decision. Understand. Again, when we talk about bribery, is the offering, the giving, the receiving, or soliciting of something of value to influence an official action. Something of value. Somebody might say, something of value, gold, cash, man give you car, them girl give something. All is something of value. All is something of value. Whether you offer it, you give it, you receive it, or you solicit it. Embezzlement is the fraudulent or dishonest appropriation of funds or property entrusted to one's care. Corruption. Abuse of function or functions are public officials improperly using their position for a benefit for themselves or others. You're using your official position, right, to improperly using your position for benefit for yourself or for others. Corruption. And then they talk about trading of influence, using a position to improperly influence the actions of others. And then, like the person said just now, corruption has far-reaching legal and social consequences, such as undermining public trust, stifling economic growth, and eroding democracy. Eroding democracy, that's what corruption does. Then they say corruptly, when you define corruptly, in legal context, the term corruptly means means purposely doing an act that the law forbids as tending to corrupt, even if the action is implicitly named as corruption in all cases. And then they talk here about 4 types, broadly 4 types. It says here types of corruption. The 4 types of corruption are often categorized as petty, corruption, grand corruption, political corruption, and unconventional corruption. Petty corruption involves small acts like bribery for minor benefits, while grand corruption involves large-scale abuse of power by high-ranking officials. Political corruption specifically relates to how public officials use their positions for personal gain. And unconventional corruption includes action like embezzlement or fraud that don't involve a direct exchange of bribe. Uh, Further breakdown, petty corruption. Small-scale corruption involves low-level officials, such as paying bribes to get a service like a driver's license, bypass a checkpoint, or get a school place. Grand corruption, large-scale corruption involving high-ranking officials and significant sums of money that have a major impact on the country's development. Then we have here now the talk about political corruption, the abuse of power by political leaders to maintain power or to personally profit, which can include manipulating elections, controlling state resources, or using influence for personal gain. Unconventional corruption, actions that don't involve a direct exchange of money or service, but still constitute a misuse of power. Examples include embezzlement, fraud, and misappropriation of public assets. Look, folks, so when they talk about corruption, when Gail Teixeira hold this round table and talk about corruption, and when the Minister of Home Affairs they tells the police to brass to tackle corruption and be decisive, and really dealing with this thing, As somebody said, look at it, tap. Then dealing with corruption in the true sense. And then let me bring Mr. Conway to have a say, and then I'm going to come back to deal some more with this corruption issue. So you understand. Again, we believe most of them, when they talk about corruption, they believe, all right, the policeman up on the road taking a raise, or some low-level public servant taking a top-up to buy lunch to execute or to expedite something. That's the extent to which they see corruption. But as the definition says, as I just explained to you, it is far more wide-ranging than that. And if we look at the definition, then we see how deep this corruption is in Guyana when they talk about political influence and to election. It's a cesspit. Guyana is a cesspit when it comes to corruption. CC, go ahead, CC.
Yeah, Paul, I just want to support you. I have a book here, Management and Supervision in Law Enforcement by Karen Hess and Wayne W. Bennett. And I just want to read a little part in support of what you're saying. Here it says, the key elements of corrupt behavior are that the conduct one is prohibited by law or rule. B, involves misuse of position. And 3, involves a reward or personal gain for the officer and or others. And here with a caution, there's a corruption is a corrosive element that will spread like rust if it is not contained and eliminated. Addressing unethical behavior and corruption has become a top priority and major challenges for police administrators. The causes of corruption are complex. Many factors contribute to corruption, included greed, personal motivators such as ego, sex, or the exercise of power, tolerance of the behavior by the community, socializing from peers and or the organization, inadequate supervision and monitoring the behavior, lack of clear accountability of employees' behavior, and no need or threat to discipline or sanctions. I read about some round table at one of the hotels in Guyana by Gail Teixeira, but I don't know who really she really targeted, because it's so widespread, that I don't know who was the target group. But It's so widespread, that a round table thing can do and anything whatsoever. The president said he going for a anti-corruption unit 6 months ago. Nothing, nothing. Whilst the corruption continue on unabated, it continue on unabated, and people gotta be careful, corruption, and it starts with a little thing, a little gift, a little package, tickets to go to the stadium to see some one of them big show and them kind of thing, tickets to go to CPL, anything, little things, and a lot of police cannot differentiate between a gift and a bribe. And then even the police too. I remember when Boston made allegations in relation to paper shot matter, and he said that the Mohammeds gave the police officer $30 million to wash up the story, the transferee, the cybercrime, send it to Escribo. And part of the thing what they said is that he was living in a house owned by a gold dealer. And lo and behold, the same police collected 10 vehicles, 10 vehicles from the same gold dealer. Understand the gold it is now under the scrutiny of the US. And they got to be careful in terms of what they accept. It might look like a gesture, a nice little gesture, but it is a bribe. It is corruption. And when the thing is, the freebies, when the freebies are not coming up as they are to, from experience, I know, as a working the police officer for years, when the freebies not coming up for the ransom, they start demand by menace. And then they go wrong, slide down the slippery slope of corruption. But all is at last, and this is according to the police force. I want to give them some advice. One, recruit with care. Establish appropriate policies and put them in writing. Adopt a good employee evaluation process. Make sure your sergeants share management values and philosophy. Develop operational control. Perform regular anti-corruption inspections and audits. Implement ethical training in all your training activities. What I'm saying is that you guys look and see who you bring in the police force. Look at your recruitment process, which is totally flawed. A lot of people with, with unethical behavior are swarming in the, when the Guyana is swarming, we can't nobody in the force, are entering the Guyana police force. And the police are doing anti-corruption exercises. They're not doing integrity testing. And Lana was saying, when we're dealing with traffic, they take away the theory and they give Zaro. And whatever Zaro tell them is that nobody doing any anti-integrity testing on Zaro for the Lana driver package. They are not paragons of virtue. Check with them. This part of the corruption process. Check with what's going on there. I mean, you go check with that areas there. But a lot of things that the police need to do And a lot of things that the government did do, they started from the government level. Corruption there, high up, deep up. We hear about the Sugate, we hear about so many other things there, and nothing is being done. Now you hear about some wrong table thing. Some wrong, it may be go wrong, may go wrong in circles, and then there's the end of it. But they need to take proper action, which they didn't do. Wrong table can't really do nothing. No way, and it's not going to work. But as you mentioned, Paul, when some international organization asks for it, oh yes, we had a round table discussion. Yes, we have this. Yes, the president said he's gonna form anti-corruption drive and this kind of thing, you know. So that's about it.
Yeah, they're just ticking these boxes. It's just designed to tick boxes. But you know, following the wrong table, the wrong table discussion that the Minister of Governance and something else, entitlement, parliamentary affairs and governance, right? And the theme was what I have it written here: partnering to build resilient and private institutions in Guyana's fight against corruption. And you put back a man in Parliament there, a speaker, who banned the word corruption from use in Parliament. You ban the word corruption. So in other words, you're ignoring that there is corruption. And don't forget, not so long ago, this program here that we run now started about 4 years ago, start talking about corruption and incompetence, corruption. And what they do? They used to say, oh, no, they used to give you the impression there's no corruption. Because then they used to tell you must bring the evidence. Bring the evidence. Well, then the evidence is produced. All of a sudden, they know that they get a word named corruption, and the Minister of Home Affairs can be talking about it. The president, I think the PPP in their manifesto talked about establishing an anti-corruption unit, and then they get a wrong table now. All of a sudden, this corruption thing, and I get a strong feeling that all this is because of international pressures. International people are seeing this thing. People saw the Sugate allegation. People would have heard and saw the allegation by Junior Bash that the president and a whole set of ministers and all them involved. People see these things. So you can operate as if nothing is going on, but people see these things and people know that there's some among the truth that say where there is smoke, there is fire. So now you're trying to tick box and so on. But here, what tickled me with this thing about Teixeira and this wrong table. They got I know it's a blog or something concerned Guyanese. The person wrote, I read part because I find it very, very interesting. Look, I'm not saying Gail Teixeira's balls the size of coconuts, but standing up at the anti-corruption roundtable this morning and announcing with a straight face that the government is, quote, constantly strengthening public institutions to combat corruption, end of quote, takes a special kind of audacity. It goes on, quoting again, the fight against corruption is ongoing, end of quote. That's what she said. She said, which is technically true. It's ongoing in the same way Bellevue is ongoing. Lots of talk, zero results, and everyone knows it's full of shit. That's what the poster right. You can't make this thing up. But God, they are sure trying. Remember the denouncement of the Transparency International report? Yeah, Guyana face planted in Transparency International Corruption Perception Index. We scored 39 out of 100, 39, right? But Teixeira, bless her heart, has been going around saying that the CPI, that's the same thing when we talk about the transparency in report, quote, is not empirical. It's just, quote, perception. You know, like how I perceive the money missing from the treasury, or how citizens perceive contracts going preferentially to family, friends, and favorites. If we are playing the perception versus reality game, then I like to officially announce that I perceive myself as owning a sweet lot in Pradoville housing, better update the land registry. No corruption here, man. Remember Mayor Thomas? The government investigation, which was thorough and swift. They asked her if she did it. She said no. and everyone went to lunch. Case closed. Corruption defeated. May still getting mad bag. Then there is the by Jack Dio. The Human Rights Committee literally asked Guyana why they haven't investigated corruption allegations against him involving Chinese businessmen. Teixeira responded to the United Nations. She said the police can't investigate because nobody filed an official complaint. Your house, and then the man say, I don't know who is the man or woman, your house is not really on fire if you don't call the fire service. Right? That is what he's saying. Right? Then he goes on to say, the Tipui, remember Tipui grip session is my personal favorite because it's so beautifully stupid. It almost becomes art. The Auditor General says we are still trying to recover 121.7 million from a company that failed to meet tender requirements, strike one, was behind schedule, strike two, get paid a nice chunk of change up front. This is institutional strengthening. This is the institutional strengthening Teixeira is talking about. We have strengthened these institutions so much that they now have the structural integrity of wet cardboard. The government has perfected this beautiful dance. Every time someone points to corruption, they respond, where is the evidence? The U.S. Treasury brings evidence. That's not empirical. Transparency International bring evidence. That is perception-based. The United Nations bring evidence. That's politically motivated. Local journalists bring evidence. That's selective reporting. It's genius, really. You can't. It's genius, really. You can't lose an argument if you simply refuse to accept that evidence exists. I should try this with my landlord rent. Show me empirical evidence that rent is real. That's just your perception of money. This morning events must have been something else. Picture it, a room full of people solemnly discussing anti-corruption measures while the corruption is literally in the room with them. They probably talk about the Public Procurement Commission, which now has all the authority of a part-time worker at a school, and the Integrity Commission, which publishes names of defaulters that everyone ignores, other than terms of conditions on a app update. Here's the thing that really bakes my head. Despite all of this, the World Bank dropped 200 million on us last year. The IMF threw 1.5 billion in 2023. The Inter-American Development Bank added another 180 million to the pile. Turns out, if you're sitting on enough oil, international lenders develop convenient memory problems about corruption. It's like dating someone rich. Suddenly their personality flaws become quirky. Teixeira ended the speech by reminding everyone that Guyana has made, quote, serious efforts, end of quote, over the past 4 years. And you know what? She's absolutely right. Serious efforts to look the other way. Serious efforts to redefine what corruption means. Serious efforts to convince us that up is down and that theft is just aggressive resource reallocation. The fight against corruption is ongoing, Minister. The problem is you're fighting the wrong team. A little lengthy read, but you got the gist. You got the gist with all this sarcasm and all of that. Right? That is what we have. They talk about corruption. This ain't gonna done there. We ain't gonna talk about the corruption. We're gonna come back to it because it is rampant. And remember, the name of this program is Speaking Out, Exposing Corruption Incompetence. And this was long ago, 4 years ago, this came out. Let me bring in Mr. Conway to obviously on this, and then we're gonna move on to the extradition case. Go on, CC.
Yeah, I listened a bit on the Minister, Gail Teixeira, on perception and reality. And then I recall when I was a sergeant, I completed a 1-year course, University of Guyana, Psychology of Adult Learning. It was done through the Institute of Distance and Continuing Education. Late and great, my mentor, Samuel Small. I remember we had a big discussion on perception and reality. I remember we come to the conclusion that perception, that what you perceive about somebody, what you think about them, that perception will influence your behavior towards that person. Your perception that Conway is a scamp, you're going to treat it as a scamp. Your perception that James is corrupt, you're going to treat him as a corrupt person. That the way, the perception, what you perceive about a person, the way you feel about a person, that will definitely influence your behavior towards that person. So when you're talking about perception, that corruption is just perception. It is really reality. It is what is happening. And if people believe that you are corrupt, they will treat you that way. That belief will influence the way they treat you. And if they see you, if the perception that you are corrupt, they will treat you as a corrupt person.
Yeah, many times perception is reality. Perception can be reality. Now we have more